Doctors tell us that the number one cause of health issues today that is growing faster than any other is loneliness. More and more we live in isolation, online, disconnected, orphaned, seemingly unable to remain in relationship and connect in community. The church used to be a place to do that. Families and neighborhoods used to do that. And there are fewer and fewer places where we connect with one another. Now, there are some exceptions, like AA and other 12-step groups, places of meaningful community that support and walk with one another. Jesus fully understands our need for community, love, and support. I will not leave you orphaned, he promises in today's gospel. Because God is not some ruthless heavenly spectator. God is not evaluating us like some reality television show judge, or criticizing us like all of the judges in our lives, the ones at work, at school, home, or our neighbors. Our God doesn't laugh when we stumble and we fall. God doesn't punish us for our lack of perfection. Instead, God gives us God's self. God gives us community, love, and support in Jesus the Christ who walks and is present with us. Jesus who accepts us unconditionally. Jesus who seeks our trust and relationship, and Jesus who promises to be with us always. With us through the coming Holy Advocate, present even when we don't recognize the power and the presence of the Spirit of God. Even when it seems that God is gone and we battle isolation and emptiness. Beloveds, we have not been abandoned. When Jesus says that he will remain with us, it's sometimes hard to envision how this support will come to us. When we don't get to see or hear those we love, the simple gifts Jesus offers us in body and blood, shared with real warm neighbors in places like this, has great power in our lives. John's gospel reminds us that even when life keeps delivering bad news, no matter how far apart we are from one another, no matter how broken relationships are, everything is at stake here. And in Jesus' own words, I will not leave you orphaned. That, beloveds, is the godly assurance that we are not and never will be alone. Everything is at stake. When everything's at stake, how do we make sure that our message goes through? If we want our children, our students, or our spouse to really hear what we have to say, how do we say it? Sometimes we worry about running the risk of an eye roll because of the importance of the message. But we are called to say what we have to say by our God who will not leave us by ourselves. An example of this is found in a 1990s movie called My Life. It's a long time ago, but it stars some folks you may recognize. Michael Keaton plays Bob Ivanovich Jones, a young man whose pregnant wife, played by Nicole Kidman, receives a diagnosis of terminal cancer. He's told that he probably won't make it before his son enters into the world, and he worries about his ability to share himself and all that he knows and loves and is passionate with his unborn son. He won't be there to see him learn how to walk and talk. He won't be there to play catch. He won't be there on his first day of school, and so he worries about these things, but more importantly, he worries about his son not fully receiving and understanding his unconditional love for him. So the character Bob records his instructions for his son so that he'll get to know his dad. Now, in the 1990s, the way to do this was on videotape. Today, we might call it a podcast or a TED Talk. You could whip out your phone and do this easily. And in these videos, Bob shows his son how to shave, how to cook spaghetti, how to drive a car, how to jumpstart a dead battery, how to shoot hoops. He does these things for him because he'll never be able to teach him in person. And he recognizes that no matter what he needs to tell his son, he has to do it before he dies. This movie, My Life, tells a story that sets our minds adrift, wondering and worrying. How would we feel and what would we do if we had to leave? If we were to die, and to know when that would happen. I see our reading today not from this character Bob's perspective or even my own from leave taking or family members dying. I see it from Jesus' perspective as he tries to prepare those he loves for his leaving, for his death, and for life and ministry without him in their midst. And unlike today when we can record our voice and image in all of those ways, Jesus, the Word made flesh who lived among us, only had his life of love and the word from Holy Scripture to guide and comfort his followers long beyond his death. 3 years ago, Kay and I, this time of year, traveled to Massachusetts to commend her great aunt to God. We gathered with family and friends from all over of this amazing saint, the sister of Kay's maternal grandmother, and a mother figure for my mother-in-law whose own mom had died while she was a child. Gertrude lived a long and robust life, and as she would say, she was 104 and a half. Along the way, she buried her husband, a daughter, and a grandson. She loved life and her Lord, but she knew that she wouldn't live forever, and so she began preparations decades ago. She, as some of us do, had a habit of writing things on the back of pictures. You remember pictures printed on paper, not just on your phone? She would go well beyond just writing who was in that picture, but she would give this wonderful descriptive commentary on the scene. And at her wake and the reception that followed the service, collages of these photos with the comments were available for all to see. And her candidness shed light on her outlook about life and her wicked sense of humor. I wonder, though, if she wrote them worrying that someday she might develop dementia or Alzheimer's, preventing her from remembering the important faces, places, and events of her life. And 30 years ago, while she was in her 70s, Gertrude started writing notes of instruction for, as she wrote, when I leave this planet. The first one, in classic Gertrude style, said, please don't spend too much on my funeral. Make it decent but not showy or lavish. And if you don't keep a little money for yourselves, I'll come back and haunt you. She was always concerned about her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She had that notorious motherly habit of reminding them to put a coat on anytime they went out in the cold, regardless of what the temperature outside really was. And so another note she left that is my favorite is that I'll be watching you to be sure you're not going out without your coats on. And be prepared, because if you go out without them, I might just tap you on your shoulder or shake you to remind you. Now, she updated these notes about her leave taking along the way as things changed for her. In 2005, she wrote, I'm still here at 96 years young. They say the good die young, I must really be bad. She went on to say that every day is special now because I know my days are limited. She lived life fully for almost 9 more years. And a month before she died, in a nursing home that she didn't want to be in, she gave her final notes of instruction. No more IVs, no more labs, no more poking. Please just leave me alone because I've lived a good, long life. John's gospel this day foreshadows Jesus' death and the darkness and the abandonment that the disciples would experience and feel so deeply. And the text shares Jesus' last instructions. And then he tells them about them during their last meal together. Because whatever he needed to tell his followers, he had to tell them before he left. Like the character Bob in the movie, like great Aunt Gertrude. We all have that need. But Jesus' message reminds us that he came into this world of darkness as the light. He came shining on sin the light of grace. He came proclaiming against deceit in the world the light of truth. He came into blindness and disease and death, bringing the light of healing. He said, I bring everyone to the Father, and I bring the Father to everyone because the Father and I are one. It doesn't happen any other way than that. This day, no matter where you are on life's journey, may you know that as a follower of Jesus the Christ, he promises to never abandon you. He promises that you will never be orphaned and that you will always know the community, the love, and the support and the presence of God in him and in the holy advocate that he sends to you.